Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sarah, and I'm part of the team here at Test Innovators. The focus of today's webinar is everything you need to know about the SAT. So without further ado, let's get started. So to start, I would like to share a little bit about what we do here at Test Innovators. We've helped over 150,000 students prepare for entrance exams and get into the most selective schools. We also work with many tutoring companies, educational consultants, and schools. Today, we will be covering an overview of the an overview of the SAT, in which we will discuss the text structure, sections, and scores. We'll also discuss general testing strategies as well as section-specific strategies. Throughout the webinar, please feel free to type questions in the Q&A, and if we have time at the end, I'll answer those questions. But if there are any I don't get to, I'll be sure to email you a response along with the webinar recording. To start, let's discuss what the SAT is and how it's used. SAT scores are used by college admissions departments. The SAT can be taken multiple times. There are 7 national test dates each year. And whenever possible, we do recommend students plan on taking the test more than once. First-time jitters can interfere with your testing experience, so having a second opportunity can help alleviate some of the stress that accompanies test taking both times. So if you know you're going to take it again, you won't feel as nervous the first time. And if you've already taken it, you'll be more familiar with it. You won't be as nervous the second time. So how does scoring work? So you receive 1 point for every correct answer and 0 points for incorrect or unanswered questions. So there's no penalty for guessing on the SAT. You're going to receive scores in 3 areas: reading and writing, and then math. And so basically you get a reading and writing score, which are combined into one score ranging from 200 to 800, and then the math scores are average. So you'll get reading and writing subscores, and then a combined score, and then a math score. And you'll also get a total score, which is going to range from 400 to 1600. So you might be wondering, what is a good score? And it really depends on the school. So many colleges will publish average SAT or ACT scores for their accepted students. Additionally, your school may have information about test scores, GPA, and other admissions information for colleges. So definitely check with your, and by your school, I mean your current school, to see what information they might have, and then check the college admissions department to see if they have data on the average ACT or SAT scores for their accepted students. The SAT consists of 4 tests, 4 sections, and then the optional essay. So first you have a reading test, which is 65 minutes long. Then you get a 10-minute break. Then you get a writing test, which is a writing and language test that's 35 minutes long, 44 questions. And then you have a math test, and this is the non-calculator section. That is 20 questions, that's 25 minutes long. Then you get a 5-minute break, and then you can do the calculator section of the math test. So you get to use a calculator on this one, which is 38 questions and 55 minutes long. So now we're going to dive into each section of the test. To start, we're going to discuss the reading section. So the reading section consists of 5 passages and 52 multiple choice questions. Each multiple choice question has 4 answers. The questions refer to the passage and ask about the main idea, details of the passages, textual evidence, words and context, test structure, and analysis. The passages are about literature, which can be classic or contemporary. They can be US or world literature. They can be about history, popular to see passages about US founding documents, such as the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, that sort of thing, or excerpts of the Great Global Conversation, which is based on works by figures like Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King. These tend to be about freedom, justice, and liberty. And you'll see a passage about social science, so you can see maybe economics, psychology, sociology. Finally, you'll see a passage about science. You might see earth science, biology, chemistry, or physics. The reading passages are in the same order on each test. First, you have the literature, then history or social science, and then another history or social science, science. Each passage is typically 500 to 700 words long. And then one of the history or social science or history passages, or one of the science passages, will include a graphical or a data stimulus along with it, like a chart or a graph or something, either with this social science or history, and one with the science. So since you have two history social science passages and then two science passages, one of each will have some kind of data in there that you'll also have questions about. Next, we're going to move on to the SAT writing and language. So you'll get 4 passages. There'll be 44 multiple choice questions. Each multiple choice question has 4 answer choices. The questions refer to an underlined portion of the passage, a section of the passage, or the passage as a whole. The writing and language section of the test, writing language section of the test will test many skills, including analysis in history, social science and science, your command of the evidence, expression of ideas, standard English conventions, and words in context. The passages for the writing and language section include topics like careers, history, social studies, humanities, and science. Okay, now we'll move on to SAT Math Basics. There are 2 math sections on the SAT. The first is the no calculator section and consists of 15 multiple choice questions and 5 written questions. So the sort of multiple choice questions are, your standard multiple choice. And then I'll show an example of that in a second. And then grid-ins, you have to come up with your own answer. So the second section is the calculator section, which is 38 questions. You are allowed to use a calculator on this, just 30 multiple choice and 8 grid-in questions. Okay, so multiple choice questions look like this, or at least the bubble sheet does. You give 4 possible answer choices. You select the one that you believe is correct. A grid-in question will look like this on the bubble sheet, which means that you have to solve the problem and then you have to fill in the answer that you think is correct. So it could be 5, the answer could be 5, or it could be 2,674. So it's or it could be 3/4. So the grid-in questions are much more open-ended. So be aware that you will have those on the test, as well as the standard multiple choice. The math topics that are covered include algebra, such as linear equations and functions, sort of general problem solving and data analysis, so ratios, probability, percentages, units, general data analysis. And then there's also some, more advanced math, like quadratic and nonlinear functions. And you'll also see things like geometry, so area, volume, angles, triangles, circles, that kind of thing. A little trigonometry as well. Okay, now we're going to discuss preparation tips for the SAT. We recommend starting your SAT prep in the late spring or summer after your sophomore year. Test prep consists of 4 steps. First, take a full-length practice test, then review your results and identify the areas that need improvement. Then do targeted practice in those areas. Finally, take another practice test and see your improvement. Now you're going to keep repeating these steps until you're ready for test day. By the spring of your junior year, you'll be ready to take the test. And that gives you plenty of time as well if you decide you'd like to take the test again. Another consideration is whether you want to take the SAT or ACT. So a lot of students will ask this question because many, if not most schools these days accept both the SAT and ACT, and check with your school first. But if you do have the option, how do you decide which test to take? So we recommend taking a full-length practice test of each. So take one full-length SAT and take one full-length ACT, and just see which one goes better. And think about what parts of each test you liked or disliked. And you may have a clear preference, you may not. So if think about things like the timing, these gridding questions, the SAT provides math formulas at the beginning of the math section, whereas the ACT does not. However, the ACT doesn't have a non-calculator section like the SAT does. The ACT also has a science section, which some students find intimidating, but I still recommend checking out a full-length version of the test, because even if you're not the strongest science student, you can still do well on it. It's not a content test. You don't have to have taken, advanced placement physics in order to ace the science section on the ACT. It's more about, reading and interpreting passages with data. So it's, in a way, it's similar to the reading comprehension section with a little math thrown in, because you have graphs and stuff like that. So basically, you want to take a full-length test of each to see if you have a clear preference or if one just goes better. And then that can help you decide which one to do. Some students even take both. Back in the day, I did, because it made me less stressed about each test to know I had an alternative. So it really is sort of which one is better for you, and it is about your personal preference. Okay, now we're going to go over some overall test taking strategies. First strategy is the process of elimination. So most questions on the SAT are multiple choice. So the advantage to that is the correct answer is somewhere there. So don't forget to use the answer choices to help you find the correct one. So if you don't know the answer, eliminating answer choices is a great start. It will increase your chance of choosing the correct answer, after you've been able to eliminate a few and make an educated guess if you can't figure out the answer. So the SAT doesn't have a wrong answer penalty, so you can take a guess. So make sure you answer every question. Guessing can only improve your score. It will not hurt your score. Using your time effectively is critical, because every correct answer is worth the same number of points. You get 1 point for every correct answer. So your goal should be to answer as many questions correctly as possible, which means you don't want to waste valuable time on hard questions when you can instead answer more easy questions in the same amount of time. So what you want to do is group questions by difficulty, something that's easy, that's hard. So when you see a question, ask yourself, do I know how to do this? If your answer is yes, absolutely, then you do the question. And if your answer is maybe, I'm not really sure about this, mark an answer for the question in your bubble sheet, circle it in the booklet, and come back to it later. So if you mark it in the bubble sheet, when you skip it, it's sort of extra insurance so that you don't make an error and miss a line in the bubbling sheet. So definitely make sure to mark something down and then come back to it later. You're going to do this for every single section of the test. So with this strategy, you answer all the easy questions first, mark the hard ones, and then at the end, you can go back and work on the hard questions. It's also important to keep track of time during the test. You're allowed to wear a watch, so I definitely recommend you do that. It's also helpful to get a feel For the test, it's helpful to know the average time per question for each section. And if you find you're behind, you'll want to work a little more quickly. And if you're ahead, you can, slow down and relax a little bit. Practicing and experiencing what it feels like to have a limited amount of time to answer questions is critical. So you're going to want to make sure to take your practice test time just so you can get a sense of what that time pressure is like. Okay, let's talk about some reading strategies. The most important rule of reading comprehension is that the passage will always provide all of the information needed to answer the question. If any part of an answer choice doesn't match the information given in the passage, it is incorrect. So whenever possible, before you answer questions, so before reading the answer choices, read the question and then come up with an answer. This helps you eliminate wrong answer choices and find the best answer if you think of something, if you think of your own answer before looking at the answer choices. With a limited amount of time, it's most effective to skim the reading passages and underline important information such as repeated words, first and last sentences, but don't rush too much. You want to make sure you understand what's going on and you can answer the questions correctly. So in terms of using the process of elimination on the reading section, you want to avoid in general answer choices that are too extreme. If you see answer choices with words like only, always, never, or other similarly extreme words, know that these are unlikely to be the correct answer. You should only choose them if you're absolutely sure that this sentiment is in the passage as well. You want to also avoid answer choices that are too specific or too broad. These are unlikely to be the correct answer. Answer choice scope should reflect the scope of the question and the scope of the passage. Next, we'll talk about strategies for the reading and language section. Sorry, for the writing and language section. The writing and language section consists of passages and questions. The questions refer to an underlined portion of the passage, a section of the passage, or the passage as a whole. So for questions that refer to an underlined portion of the passage, it's best to read a sentence or two before the underlined portion and a sentence or two after, to make sure you have the context rather than read the entire passage. For questions that refer to the passage as a whole, make sure to read the entire passage. So, you can do the questions that refer to just a specific area first, and then go back and do the ones that refer to the entire passage. By the time you finish all the questions, you will most likely have read the passage. Okay. The other thing you want to do is think of your own answer choice think of your own answer first, much like you did for the reading section. This will help you avoid common pitfalls and answer choices that look good but are not actually correct. And then after selecting an answer, you want to reread the sentence using your answer to make sure it's correct. So you can often think about it like you were editing a paper when you're doing the writing and language section. Okay, now let's talk about some math strategies. Make sure you read the questions carefully. This is really important. You want to underline important words and numbers. Pay attention to the units. Those can be a big help, a big hint as to what you're looking for. And then make sure you answer the actual question. So double check that you've answered the question they're asking. For example, are they asking you to solve for X or are they asking you to solve for X plus 4? If it's helpful, draw pictures. Sometimes that can be very helpful. And always write down your work on scratch paper. It is so much easier to do work that you've written down rather than, try to do everything in your head. Use estimation whenever possible. So it can be a powerful tool for eliminating wrong answer choices and narrowing things down quickly. For some questions, the jumping off point is in the answers, so it's helpful to work backwards. For questions with an unknown quantity, you can substitute the answer choices for the unknown quantity to see which is correct. Always start with the middle answer choice to minimize the number of answers you have to substitute. Sometimes the math questions may seem very challenging to solve abstractly. In cases like these, it can be helpful to use actual numbers to determine the answer. Are there any questions? If there are, please feel free to use the Q&A section to send in your questions now. And I'll be sure to answer any questions I don't get to via email. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, know that we are here to help if you have something that comes up later. So please check out our site at testinnovators.com/SAT, or feel free to contact us with any questions. You can email us at support@testinnovators.com or give us a call at 1-800-280-1857. We are here 7 days a week. So if you're not sure where to start, a great place is with the free 20-minute consultation with one of our online tutors. And as a thank you for joining us for the webinar, please feel free to use this coupon code SAT Need to Know for $10 off our ultimate package. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a fantastic evening. Thanks. Bye.